Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I might just say, every time I go to Minot, I'm impressed with those same young men and women, and they do get younger every time. But one of the things that impresses me the most is that even the Southerners never complain about the weather in Minot, and that takes incredible discipline. Anyway, I want to dig in a little more to the deterrence policy questions, issue that the chairman brought up in terms of clarifying your statement. And I noted you are quoting the interim strategic policy in that a couple of places relating to what I think is a goal to reduce, or it seems to be a goal to reduce our nuclear deterrence. And I want to ask you, Ms. Tamero, I mean, how much risk are we willing to accept to reduce our nuclear deterrence? The word reduce is used a couple of times.
Let me clarify. Having a strong nuclear deterrence is one of our highest priorities.
Yep.
And so we will continue to maintain strong and reliable nuclear deterrence, which has been the cornerstone of our national security.
I just get concerned when the word reduce is used several times in your testimony. And it seems to conflict, so I hope we can get it clarified on the right side of things. I guess you would then testify that you don't think the deterrent is too great right now for the global threats that we face?
Again, I think we need to maintain strong nuclear deterrence, and that as we have for decades.
Okay, let me back up a little bit. Maybe General Ray, you could answer this. If we were to say go from 400 to 300, for example, ICBMs, just as an example, because that gets talked about, would we need to shore up some other conventional system, or how would we fill a gap if there was a reduction of some type?
Sir, thank you for the question. When I think about how I would answer how much is enough, I think is one of those questions. I remind myself of the series of policy questions that underwrite everything. Mm-hmm. The first one is, of course, are you a counter-value or a counter-force construct? And I think because of our capabilities or precision, the number of threats that hold us at risk, that we would prioritize those as the thing to deal with. And obviously, the enemy systems begin to shape that. The second I ask is no first use, launch under warning, launch under attack. And how we go down that path and where we are, I think, is fitting for what we're dealing with. If the policy changes, then there's ramifications. And then what we do with New START, does that really answer all of our problems in the strategic environment, or is it a pragmatic take that we put a very sensible fence around the things that we can control and continue to work? We should celebrate as a nation that when we put arms control alongside very credible modernization to put a credible deterrent on the table, we've removed thousands of weapons, and we've become a better planet for that. So when I just walk through those policy questions, and then the next one, of course, is extended deterrence, which has a very clear counterproliferation dimension. I would turn and go, what's your policy? And then what's the threat I'm up against, and how I line those up? I think there's the discipline that we all have to keep in light of what we're dealing with, and particularly with the Chinese growth. If I had to deal with the threats, I'm sure Admiral Richard would ask for me to think through the sources. The idea of putting bombers back on alert, it's something that we practice, but we don't sustain, because we've been fortunate enough to live in an environment up to now to where we can afford to not have them on alert, but have them in a ready status. And it takes me a certain number of classified hours to go back. So I don't have the bomber crews, I don't have the tanker crews, I don't have the bombers that go and meet all the combatant commands. There's no allied bomber force. This is it. Mm-hmm. And so how we would address that from the air component side, you would have to make sure that Strategic Command had those other resources to meet the targeting guides.
Well, and thanks for all that, and that's a great explanation, because I do worry as I look at what it seems to be some direction at least. And Ms. Tamero, I understand that you you don't want to take things off the table in the middle of a discussion, and I can appreciate that. But there are certain things that have been studied pretty well, to its limit, and one of them being the viability of Minuteman III and the GBSD. And I think it was Senator Cotton that went through starting with 14, or maybe it was you, General Ray, started with 14 and all the way through all the administrations, going back to that, the milestone A decision, milestone B decision, all those things that reviewed that. And I just wonder if is there any reason to believe that any additional reviews would do anything to overturn the mountain of evidence that supports the conclusion that's already been drawn?
Sir, let me just start by saying that there is very strong support for modernization of the triad, as Secretary Austin testified before Congress, as Deputy Secretary Hicks testified. And so that will be a high priority for our review, is to ensure that we continue to modernize the triad. Of course, we'll look at how the programs are doing, what the program risks are, to make sure that we have the capabilities we need when we need them.
Thank you.